Hello, welcome one and all to the 11th official episode of Dyllon Explains Everything. My name's Dylan, and in case you couldn't tell by the title, I'm the one explaining everything, including the topic of today, cloning. I'm going to be running through a lot of facts, so if you're curious as to where I get my information, check the description below for a list of links. So what is cloning? Cloning is basically a group of processes that lets us make a genetic copy of a certain organism, like a dog or a sheep or a human. The new organism that was created from the original is called a clone, and even though it may be genetically the same, if you were to make a clone of yourself, it wouldn't have the same mind as you and it would basically act like a child. I know this sounds like some weird thing that humans made up, but the truth is that this has actually appeared in nature, which means that humans aren't complete weirdos. You see, certain organisms and things like DNA and bacteria can actually produce by themselves, creating a genetic copy of themselves. This is because that there's no other parent organism to actually give any different genetic traits to the offspring, so therefore it's got the same exact genetic traits as the parent organism. Humans have done this without technology though this is kind of on the edge of not being a clone. Before twins are born, they come from the same genetic material, but they split apart. This creates two genetic copies of the same organism. My point is that humans didn't just make this stuff up, we actually found it in nature, though we have found ways to artificially do it with technology, specifically 3 methods. The first method is called gene cloning, and it's basically when scientists find a piece of genetic material or DNA that they want to have more of, and they take it out and isolate it and let it reproduce normally, creating multiple copies of that DNA. This makes it much easier for scientists to study these pieces of DNA because they've got a lot of copies to work with. The second method is therapeutic cloning, and it happens when scientists want more of a certain stem cell. They can take the nucleus of that stem cell and put it in another cell that has no nucleus, and this cell will create clones of itself, allowing them to have more stem cells. This allows scientists to get a lot of these cells and therefore the pieces inside of them, which can be used to help patients in hospitals who need parts of stem cells. The third form of cloning is reproductive cloning, where you take a piece of genetic material and put it in an organism that you want to reproduce. That organism then makes more organisms from that genetic material. This allows scientists to make a lot of organisms that have the same genetic material without having to do an extremely complicated process for all of them. As you can tell, we're nowhere near the sci-fi level of cloning that you see in things like movies. In fact, in most countries, cloning of humans is actually illegal. There have been around 46 countries to make cloning of humans illegal, including Australia, Brazil, Canada, France, Germany, India, Israel, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Spain, and the UK, just to name a few. They have claimed that cloning is immoral and unethical in all of these countries. But notice a country that I didn't say, the USA. Turns out it's perfectly legal to clone in most of the US. Other than 10 states: Arizona, Arkansas, Indiana, Michigan, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Virginia, which prohibit cloning of any kind. And there's 4 states, including Arizona, Indiana, Louisiana, and Michigan, which prevent state funding of cloning. There are also 10 states that have laws regarding killing clones of humans that are made, and there's also some states that include cloning as a problem for health professionals and can get their license removed. This all started in 1996 when a sheep named Dolly was cloned, and it was the first mammal to ever be cloned. Therefore, countries had to start taking sides on what to do in case someone wanted to clone a human. Dolly wasn't the first animal to be cloned, though. There were a few before her, including a salamander in 1902 and some frogs in 1958. But after Dolly, scientists started cloning mammals and other animals, as well as many other things. As with any new technology, there's going to be some companies that capitalize off of this, including a company in South Korea, which started cloning pets for $100,000, even if your pet was deceased. There's also a company in Texas that will clone a cat for $25,000 and a dog for $50,000. This has become a huge industry for many other companies across the world as well. There's even a company that will clone trees in order to make good wood for certain instruments. This just all goes to show how much cloning has allowed us to do many things with different animals, plants, and other species. Kind of like in movies you see like Jurassic Park, where they make something come back from extinction. But we couldn't do that, right? Well, it turns out this has already been done, not with dinosaurs, but in Spain there was a group of scientists in 2003 that brought back a species of goats called the bucardo, and several other scientists have started doing the same. For example, at Harvard, there's a group of scientists that's working on bringing back a woolly mammoth using cloning. This would be a huge milestone for science and cloning. So why haven't we started cloning humans? I mean, it'd be great to have things like harvesting organs, more military soldiers, and many other health and safety benefits. So what's the big deal? Well, it's extremely difficult, and there's actually multiple sources who have claimed to have already cloned a human, though they have no evidence to show this, including a group of scientists in 1998 that supposedly cloned a human for the first time, but the process was interrupted when the human was only 4 cells. Also, back in 2002, there was a religious group that claimed to have cloned multiple humans, but they had no evidence of this and they wouldn't let anyone see the cloned humans. Yet again, in 2004, there was a scientist in Science magazine that claimed to have made the world's first human clone, but he provided no evidence nor pictures, so a lot of people were very confused until 2006 when Science magazine actually retracted the article. The fact is that there's no evidence that there was ever a human clone made, and there's a reason for that. Humans are a lot more complex than any other animal in order to clone, and it's a very fragile and delicate process that could go wrong very quickly. Even without the cloning of humans, cloning has helped out society in many great ways. Even though the cloning of a deceased pet sounds amazing, there's many other practical uses for this technology. For example, the first mammal ever cloned, Dolly the sheep, produces a certain kind of milk that produces more blood clots. This is to help people who cannot blood clot like normal people and therefore need the special protein from the milk. Another reason that clones are so great is that they are all the exact same genetically, so they'll have the same outcomes when taking experimental medicine, so that we can test easier with these experimental drugs and medicines. Cloning can also make up for the food shortage in the world, since the cloned animals can be used to feed people, and the FDA, or the Food and Drugs Administration, has already approved the meat that comes from clones as being the exact same as the meat that comes from the original copies. This means that scientists could use clones to make more food, medicine, drugs, and anything that comes from a plant or an animal. Also, as mentioned before, we could bring back extinct animals or keep endangered animals safe by using cloning and using the DNA that's left from them in order to make more. The problem is cloning, especially reproductive cloning, is very imprecise and not practical at all. For example, Dolly the sheep was the only one out of 277 pieces of genetic material that actually became a living organism. This, coupled with safety and health concerns, has stopped a lot of scientists from making any progress with cloning. Also, most of the clones that were made didn't even survive that long. Scientists have also reported problems in the size of the organisms, as well as defects in the vital organs like the heart and the lungs. These have stopped the innovations that have been going on with cloning. Still, if we can get therapeutic or reproductive cloning right, we could help in a lot of areas, including agricultural and medicinal areas, as well as many other in society, and possibly fix a lot of the problems that haunt us to this day. Still, whether you think that cloning is right, wrong, horrifying, disconcerting, amazing, helpful, or whatever, you have to admit it has helped us in areas like agriculture and medicine, as well as many other things in the future. With all that being said, I hope you liked today's video. If you did, be sure to tune in next week on Saturday at 10 a.m. when I post the next video. And let me know your thoughts about this DEE and maybe ideas for future DEEs in the comments below. And with all that being said, my name's Dylan and I explain everything.